Welcome to WITI Africa, where we have conversations with tech entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things in Africa to impact the tech ecosystem. My name is Winifred. I'm the head of WITI Africa. WITI is Workforce Innovation, Trust and Influence. I'm also a certified John Maxwell speaker, coach, and leadership trainer. Joining me today on WITI Africa is Sicelo Dube, all the way from Zimbabwe. She's known as the STEM leader. Ms. Sicelo Dube is a Mandela Washington Fellow. She's a young leader championing education, girl empowerment, and entrepreneurship in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. The STEM lady is a member of the STEM Expert Knowledge Network under the Office of the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor in Africa. She is the Zimbabwe Science Ambassador and award-winning science entrepreneur. She's the founder of LEC Biotech, a company that she started at 23 years old to grow scientists for the future generation through building and equipping science laboratories and spearheading capacity building for science educators, especially in rural schools. Her passion for a practical approach to STEM has influenced her teaching career, focusing on encouraging young people to explore new and innovative ways to harness the power of STEM to make a difference in their communities under the Science Space Initiative. The STEM lady champions youth development and is passionate about empowering the girl child, an approach that led her to establish Elevate Trust, a youth development nonprofit organization whose main initiatives include innovators, hub clubs, and STEMFem Network, which boasts of mentoring girls to take up STEM careers, contributing to gender parity in the STEM workforce. She's a leadership coach and motivational speaker for girl and women empowerment programs. Ms. Dube serves as an innovative young entrepreneur on a number of boards, which includes the Harare Institute of Technology, Faculty of Industrial Manufacturing and Engineering, STEM Matters International and Monachrome Mining. She's also one of the Africa regional leaders for workforce innovation, trust, and influence. She represents them in East Africa. Ms. Dube holds an MBA from the University of Gloucestershire, an MSc in Applied Microbiology and Biotechnology from the National University of Science and Technology, a BSc in Biological Science and Biochemistry from the University of Zimbabwe, and a PDM in HIV/AIDS from the University of Stellenbosch. She also holds numerous certificates in different areas and from different organizations. She's currently looking forward to pursuing her doctorate studies under the topic Developing an Entrepreneurship Mentorship Business Model for the Commercialization of STEM Innovation by Female Students at Tertiary Institutions in Zimbabwe. Welcome, Ms. Sicelo Dube. That was a tongue twister, I tell you. So many accomplishments, my dearest friend. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so, a lot of what we've talked about, Ms. Sicelo Dube, It's innovation, innovation, innovation. When we read your bio, all that comes across is I'm a woman who is working with the youth, who is encouraging them to become innovators. So before we start talking about your work, let's talk about you. So tell me, how did you get into STEM and in particular promoting STEM education?
Thank you. So I think my passion started when I was a student. I loved being in the lab. So I loved being in the lab. And when I graduated, my first job was to be a laboratory assistant. Being a laboratory assistant at a school in Bulawayo called Masiye Phambili College made me see how much I loved inspiring the young children to take up STEM education, how I loved to ignite their passion for chemistry practicals, how I would even promise them that we'll blow up the lab today and we make it so fun. They would all be excited. So from the first level of entry into high school, they'll be excited. I felt it was my calling. I loved the space. And then I said, why not start a company that will equip schools with laboratory equipment so that they can be able to blow up their labs and ignite this passion, because science is nicer when you're doing it. Science is easier when you can experiment. That is how I started. So at 23, I started my company and we started equipping science laboratories in Zimbabwe. We started even building some science laboratories. And before we knew it, we had a STEM lady coming up. And it has been my journey of passion for science education and loving every space that I get to inspire the younger generations, because the future is surely anchored on STEM.
When you talk about STEM laboratories, I know that that is a big challenge in Africa, where there are just not enough laboratories, especially when you're looking at the rural area. Really, science, STEM is all about practice. It's not just about the the theory of science, the theory of technology and applied engineering and mathematics. Is the ability to take theory into practice. And I tell you that when I finished my first degree and I went into the workforce, I was shocked that there was such a big gap between what they had taught me in school and what was in real life. Especially my first job was in Stellenbosch as an oil field engineer. And I was shocked that, oh my God, all that linear algebra I did, all that multivariable calculus, I did not see that on the oil rigs. And I spent so many nights burning the candle to learn all those formula and quantity. It was a big shock. But that really informed my life. And as an older woman, I decided to homeschool my children because I wanted them to learn things that were real, that they could transfer to reality. That practice was so important. And laboratory is the first environment where people can come together and transfer their theoretical knowledge into practice. So tell me, what challenges have you encountered in building laboratories, encouraging students that knowing the theory is not enough? Knowledge is not enough. We must turn that knowledge into action. We must practice what we have learned and come up with. I remember we used to write all these hypotheses. We write the theory, we write the hypothesis, we had the format. How have you been able, what challenges have you encountered in building laboratories?
Thank you for the question. And just to start off by saying, it's so true how you learn all these things in the classroom. And later on, you ask yourself, why did I repeat that year in university, struggling with statistics and struggling with calculus, and I'm not applying it in everyday life? So this is exactly one of the reasons why we need the practical approach to teaching, especially in our curriculum in Africa, more project-based learning, where students are really applying what they are learning, to really motivate the real scenario of the future of work. it's always an interesting conversation on how we all slowed down at some point in university because we could not get the equations right, and we have no use for them now. But anyway, going back to the laboratories and the development of infrastructure in Africa, in Zimbabwe, for a fact, we have done a bit of work in pushing for a practical approach to teaching of science. And we've really embarked on that drive to make sure that every school has a laboratory. But the truth is, economically, things are not so, so good. So you still do have some schools where we get there and we're at an outreach in the rural areas, and there is no science laboratory to ignite and inspire them. So we've been privileged as the director of Elevate Trust, a not-for-profit making organization. We've managed to get funding from F5 organization, which has given us the ability, enabled us to go to the rural areas to take science there. And one of the findings definitely is there is lack of laboratory infrastructure. So we are trying different ways to equip the schools. We are doing crowdfunding. We're reaching out to alumni of different schools so that together we can build the laboratories. As active citizens, we all have a role to play. We're not going to just sit and wait for it to happen from the government, and some governments, as you know, could be struggling. But what is important is that the will is there, and we come to communities, and the community is responsive. The community is willing to make the bricks. The community is willing to do a science levy. We're getting somewhere. And the other gap that we're seeing as we're talking about laboratories and infrastructure is the teacher development and training, where you get to a space and you see that even if the laboratory was there a long time ago, it's not being fully utilized. And there's need to capacitate the teachers so that they understand the emergency and the need for practicals to be done today, considering where we are with robotics, artificial intelligence, and the real application of science to solve problems in the community. So yes, there have been challenges, and we're still working on it, and we're still making the broad call to say, wherever you can and when you can, let's contribute towards the development of infrastructure for education in our communities.
So as a female who is carrying this message to your community that STEM is important for the development for the sustainable development of the community, but that the theory of STEM is not sufficient, one has to be involved in the practice so that we can become innovators, so that the students can become innovators and develop products and design services that will solve the problems. What challenges have you encountered as a female carrying that message? Because most people, I remember as a female engineer, I was the first Black female engineer they had employed at Stellenbosch. I remember all the slack I got as a Black female engineer working on the oil rig. Nobody had prepared me for all that microaggression, all that double competence, a lot of barriers that I face. So tell me, you carry this message that we need to have laboratories. Teachers, you need to be trained. You need to get your students to understand that STEM is all about practical. You can know all the formula. If you cannot take that formula and develop products with it, it's of no value. And so you have been carrying that megaphone. I see you everywhere on social media, working with the students. Well done. So has your message been received, knowing that you are a female and you are the one, a female voice is the one being heard in all these spaces and places?
Yes, no one prepares you for it, right? You get to a space and you discover that the young people, their role models in science are not this Black woman that they're looking at. You even ask them to say, who are your role models in science? And then you discover they don't even relate. They'll tell you of people, not that it's a bad thing, they'll tell you of people that some even passed away some time ago, but they left great footprints, fine. But then they can't relate with the real people living today, African, in their spaces, in their communities, were doing great. And I always say the problem lies with us, the female scientists. We need to tell our story. We need to be the role models for the girls. You will not understand it better till you can relate to a human being, someone who's really doing it. And I always get fascinated by how they can't relate and get challenged by the fact that they can't relate and get even more ignited to keep on, getting the microscope and getting on stage and sharing that women can be great scientists. Women can contribute so much to the community. We want more scientists who are women, because if we empower the woman, definitely the future of Africa is great. So no one prepares you for it, but let's prepare the current generation for it, because we share our story.
So that is really good. That one of the challenges you encountered is just based on your gender, that people do not expect a female to be the one holding the microphone and telling them that they have a seat at the table, at the STEM table, and that the problem is so complex that we need diverse perspectives to solve the problem. I tell you that as a young girl in Queen's College, when I was in my 4th year, what's the name? Engineer Olumaduka. A minute, the name skipped me. Excuse me. And Engineer Olumaduka came to my secondary school, and she talked about her career as an engineer. And I tell you that up to that time, I'd never seen a female engineer. I always can wear. That's why I wear a red lipstick. Especially, I've not seen one wearing a red lipstick. And she had a briefcase. She was so confident, and she had this red lipstick, and she was talking about the fact that she was an engineer. And at that time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be an accountant. But then what else was there for me to do? And so when she talked about her career, like you said, that resonated with me. That fitted my personality. I love to be outdoors. I love to solve problems. The subjects that I liked in school, they were subjects that she told me were foundation to engineering. And that, she's become my very good friend. And that was what sparked my curiosity. So role models matter. But one of the challenges we face as females is that when you tell the children to draw a sketch of a role model, they will definitely not draw a woman. They will draw a man. They will draw different people, a man of different colors and shapes. But for them to think of a woman, if you tell them to draw an astronaut, they will not draw a woman. An engineer, they will not draw a woman. Different industries, you will see they will not draw a woman. So one of the challenges that you faced was really just being accepted, that your message being embraced, and that because you can do it, they too can do it. So in this, your advocacy in your career as a STEM advocate with your organization, your nonprofit organization and your for-profit organization, have you encountered any failures that you would like to share? Any failures in your professional life that was something that caused you to exhale and for a minute to pause and just kind of exhale before you gathered yourself together to move forward? What sort of failures have you encountered that you feel at liberty to share?
Yes, definitely. There's been failures along the way, especially in the entrepreneurship journey. It's not easy to commercialize science, and it's not an easy business like waking up and you're selling clothes. We have embarked on a journey of making chemicals, of making equipment. And here and there's been economical challenges, financial challenges, where sometimes business is not doing well and you have to lose some good team members. And the biggest lesson I've gotten in leadership is teamwork. I've learned that to be a good leader and keep things going, you need to be part of the team. You don't need to be a detector. You don't need to be a leader who's leading from a far-off vision from the rest of the team. You need to be part of the team. You need to share this vision constantly. You need to strategize constantly. The team needs to understand. And it's one of the challenging things to really be a humble leader and lead and work with the team because of the financial challenges that you're bound to face. One thing I've also learned is that you need to be passionate about what you do, because if you're not passionate about what you do, when times get hard, you definitely exit. So if you have your area of expertise and you're doing your TB research, you're doing your HIV research, you're doing your chemical research, sustainable energy, you need to be passionate about it, because it's not going to be overnight that you wake up and your drug is on the desk, that you wake up and your renewable fuel is what we're using for our cars, is trial and error in science business. And you need to be dedicated. You need to have the passion. You need to be a team player, because you will not make it alone. If you want to go far, you can. If you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go with others. So yes, we've had some tough times, but I think passion, consistency, and really knowing the impact of what you're doing to the community will keep you going. Because if you think I'm going to stop making the chemicals, how will the education sector survive? If you're going to stop and shut down the company, all these other young people you've employed, where will they go? So there's been challenges, most of them be economic challenges because of the current economic challenges that we have in Zimbabwe, but we have not stopped. And we are not going to stop, because education is a serious matter.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that. You have alluded to the fact that in order to, one of the challenges that you've had has been economic, and you had talked about it before, about funding being a challenge, both in your nonprofit work and your for-profit work, but that also having a clear vision is a challenge, because sometimes entrepreneurs go and they're fueled by passion, but they don't have a clear vision of what they want to do. So clarity, I always say clarity is kind. If you are clear about what you are doing and you are passionate about what you are doing, you can bring other people along. But if you don't have a clear vision, people are going to be very confused. And after a while, they're like, this person doesn't know what they are doing. But having a clear vision is one thing. Being able to communicate that vision, that's what you've alluded to. You want to be able to communicate, but not communicate only cognitively. You want to be able to communicate such that people can connect with it on an emotional level, because human beings are driven by emotions. So being able to communicate it in such clear and concise manner, so that people know exactly what they are supposed to do and that there is no confusion. Because one of the things, breakdown in communication is a big challenge when you are running a tech, especially a tech startup. Things are so fluid. So being able to say, I have this vision, this is exactly how we are going to accomplish it, but also being flexible. And you talked about being a good team member, so that your team members know that you have a stake in it. You are not leading from afar, but you are actually working with them, and you are leading with empathy, so that you are communicating, you are open to them, you are sharing knowledge, and you are open to receive knowledge, and being humble to receive knowledge. I think that's kind of one of the things you shared about, resilience, that you are going to fail. There will be times you have to pivot, but for your team members to know that you are all in the game together, and that you are not going to pack up tomorrow, because people need a sense of certainty. So when I read your bio, there was so much talk about innovation. So tell me, WITI is all about workforce innovation, trust, and influence. How do you encourage your team members and even the students that you go out to motivate to become STEM professionals? How do you encourage them to be innovators?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I always say everyone is an innovator. I always say everyone is the gene for innovation. You just need to spark it. Everywhere around you, there's something you can touch and change, but are you willing to do so? So we are a learning organization, and we encourage innovation. I always tell them, if you are just going to be yes people and just take what I say, then you're not part of the team. Team members need to bring things to the table. Let's think outside the box. And we've been lucky to be in an economy like Zimbabwe, because we are constantly being challenged to make it work. How are we going to make it work tomorrow? Because things are changing so fast. and even with the students. Are you seriously learning today so that you are employed? Not all of us are going to be employers, but some of us have to be employees, fine. But then what are you doing? And if it's not cut out for you, share the idea that the one who wants to be an employer can take. So I always encourage the young people to say we can innovate. We can think outside the box. There's room for everyone.
You know, one of the things, because I homeschooled my children for a few years, and one of the things I told them, they are grown now, and they're always doing it back to me. And they say, Mommy, guess who taught us to do that? Ask questions. Right. Never be satisfied with just the knowledge you have. Ask why. Yeah. Ask why. 5 levels of why. Why this? Why this? You know, to become an innovator, you have to be curious.
Exactly.
You cannot just accept things as they are. Why this? Why? Why can't we do it this other way? You know, so being curious to ask questions, being curious to put up your hand and not being afraid to say that I do not know and ask the question. You know, I was in a meeting and there were all these top exec and there was an intern in this high-level meeting and she put up her hand and the questions she was asking, I was like, oh my goodness. And so after the meeting, I went to her. You know, I always love to put a pat on people's back and to compliment them. I said, how old are you? And she said 21. And she's just a senior in university. I said, your questions were so intelligent and you were in such a high-level meeting and you had the confidence to ask all these questions. Where did you get that from? And she's a final year student in engineering, but guess what? She said that her parents are engineers and they encouraged her to go and take some law courses because lawyers are always asking questions. Lawyers are always asking, why is it like this? They're always encouraging you to think outside the box. So I was so impressed with her. So we have to tell people to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say you look like a fool. Ask why. Why is it like this? Why can't it be done this other way? Have you thought of this other way? When ideas come to you, do not be afraid to look foolish. Ask questions. One of the ways we can encourage students to be innovators is not to just be a receiver of information, but to be people who are curious to engage with the material and to ask why. Why is it like this? Can it be done a different way? And in an economy like Africa, where we have very little funds, being creative to say, how can we stretch that money? How can we use that same money to achieve the same objective? So asking questions is one of the ways you encourage people to be innovators. Another thing is creating a safe environment where they can fail without being judged. Creating a psychologically safe environment where it is okay to experiment and fail. Nobody's going to fire you if you fail. We want you to fail forward. John Maxwell is always saying, he wrote a whole book on failing forward. My daughter says that's her best book because I made her read it from 6th grade onwards all throughout university. Because people don't want to fail. Human beings don't want to fail. They feel like they will be criticized. But when you create a psychologically safe place where you reward effort, that is not so performance driven, because the world we live in is not so linear. So we want people who are prepared to experiment and fail and pick themselves up and fail. And that is how you build resilience. The world we live in today is looking for resilient people. So what WITI is all about workforce innovation. One of the things that we are encouraging people, and we are saying it loud and clear, like you said, everybody's an innovator. We want people to be curious. We want people to not be afraid to fail. We want people to ask questions. So tell me, you talked about teamwork. Teamwork is so important, being part of the team, a team understanding that everybody has a seat at the table and, everybody's perspective is welcome. how do you build trust in a team? Because if there's no trust in a team, I mean, people are not willing to share knowledge. So building trust in a team is a big challenge because it's easier to deal with machines than to deal with human beings. So tell me, how have you talked a lot about teamwork. So how have you built trust in your teams?
It's a difficult one. And as leaders, we're not immune to other things. We also make errors, we make mistakes. So it's always hard, the issue of trust. But I'm a keen believer of trust is earned. In any given situation, you have to earn the trust. So if you're a leader who communicates effectively, it goes back to clearly communicating, then they'll trust your word. So sometimes in leadership, you learn you have to talk less and do more. Because the more you say things and you don't keep the promises or you don't do as you say, you lose the trust. But you have to earn the trust. Keep your promises and make everyone feel special. Make everyone feel they are part of the game, like we're saying. Everyone is part of the team and everyone has something to contribute. So trust is earned, and leadership has to be, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Trust is so important, such an important topic about trust, because the people who have access to your life, they can I call them destiny stealers or destiny destroyers or destiny helpers. The people who have access to your life can help you achieve your destiny, or they can sabotage you. So it's very important to have boundaries, to know that not everybody should have access to you, that you should have some things that are your treasures, your thoughts, your words, your emotions. Those things are treasures, your vision, your values, those things are your treasures. People have to earn the right to have access to those things. So like you said, trust is earned. People typically, especially when you come out of the academic world and you enter the real world, you kind of feel like everybody's still at the level of your school, everybody's still naive and young, and you don't realize that there are people who, they're just different types of personalities. And so you have to protect yourself, you have to pay attention and observe people, and not just take their word for it, but observe their behavior. And I think
not everyone around you can be trusted,
yes,
especially in this innovation where you have to protect your ideas. You say your idea prematurely, someone is going to steal it. There are now a lot of issues around IP and law around protecting ideas. So as much as trust is earned, it's also not for you to earn it everywhere. There are some spaces where you should not trust everyone. And that is just how it is. And that's why I was saying leadership is hard, but it's also a good thing for us women to take up the challenge and be leaders.
Yes, yes. One of the things I tell my mentees is that social and emotional intelligence needs to be developed intentionally. It's very different from academic intelligence. Academic intelligence, you can get all your A's and graduate summa cum laude and your first class, but you get into the real world and you find that you are not successful because you've not invested the same amount of time you invested in studying, in studying your books. You've not invested that the same amount of time in observing people and studying them and knowing who should have access to you and who should not have access to you, and understanding different personalities and knowing how to relate to different personalities and what to share with different personalities. So it's vitally important we tell our mentees that you must have boundaries. You must know what your values are. You must know what your treasures are. You must know, in the Bible, they say, do not cast your pearls before swine. You must know who to share information with and who not to share information with. You must know how to speak, how to communicate. You must, when you are building teams, you must know who to have in your team. And one of the things I always tell them is that you are a leader, you have a way of doing things. It's very important that you ask other people in your team, especially those who are different from you, who think differently from you. Ask them what their opinion is, because sometimes we have blind spots. We do not see everything. So being open to ask your team, especially those that do not think like you, what do you think? Because that will broaden your perspective, blind spots, things that you did not consider. Somebody else in your team may see it and may prevent you from going down a dark path or hitting a landmine. So in as much as we say we should protect yourself, I'm not saying that you should enclose yourself and not communicate with people who are different from you. But be wise. It takes wisdom to live in this world. So that is important. I see somebody has a hand up, Darlene Duplessis. Darlene, do you want to ask a question before I continue? You have to unmute yourself, Darlene. Darlene, you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes. All right. Good morning, ladies. Good afternoon, wherever you are. I just want to make a comment. This is my first attendance of this event. And I'm delighted to be here. And I am so impressed by you ladies, and just absolutely delighted, because I was born in South Africa, and I'm absolutely passionate to be involved and to help the youth of Africa improve its standing in the world and realizing its enormous potential. There is just so much untapped potential. And I just want to urge anybody that's part of this group to reach out to your sisters and brothers in technology. I'm from a technology background. I've worked a little bit with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I've worked with PEPFAR. I worked for IBM for about 20 years. So there are significant opportunities through tech companies that actually wants to promote STEM education in Africa and empower the youth of Africa.
Darling, can you hold your thoughts? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hold your thought for a minute. Hold your thought. You can also share your message on the chat. Hold your thoughts.
Okay.
I'm really looking for people who want to talk about trust, because I think trust is very important. So if you are in this community, this is a learning community. We have shared about how important it is to how you should guard yourself in who you should trust, and how you should seek opinions on your ideas from people who are different from you. If you have an idea about how to build trust in a team that is different from what we have shared, and you want to contribute to this talk, please share it here, because trust is part of WITI's identity. We are workforce innovation, trust, and influence. So trust is something that is so important to us. Understanding how to build trust in team is always part of our conversation. So Adekoya Otman, I would like you to be very focused when you respond to my question, and don't go down a rabbit trail. How do you build trust in a team? Adekoya Otman, please unmute yourself.
All right, thank you, Ma. Good evening from here. So,
please speak. Okay. We are listening.
Okay, the way I build trust personally, having led in some capacities, so I got to understand that you have to put yourself first. Like, you have to be the sample of that trust you want to build. You have to be the first point of the trust you are trying to preach to those people that are going to take after that thing you want to do. So what I do is I show those that follow me the way I want them to do. So I take this path go theory of leadership into consideration whenever I want to act. So I create that path that I want my followers to follow. So when creating that path, they understood that this is the direction we are going. And for the fact that I am doing the same thing, it is easier for them to adapt. It is easier for them to follow through.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And I really like what you are talking about. You're a very authentic person. You are not just somebody that says, that shares knowledge. You are a doer. So you do exactly what you are saying. So you're trustworthy. You don't just, you live by your values and you live it out loud so that people can see that you keep to your word, and so you are trustworthy. So before I continue with my questions to Sicelo Dube, does anybody have anything else? We're pausing for a minute because this is important. It's core to our identity. Does anybody else have something they would like to add to the body of knowledge on how do you build trust in your personal experience? If you lead teams, how do you build trust in your team? Does anybody have something to add to that body of knowledge? Thank you so much for what you shared. Okay, so we're going to continue. Sicelo, I hope you have not, I hope I've not lost you. I hope you are still there. Your camera is off, Sicelo. While Sicelo is getting her camera up, we'll continue to talk about trust, building trust in a team. Another thing that is important to build trust in a team is to be a leader that leads with empathy. You know, when we are working with human beings, and human beings have different areas of their life, and human beings are emotional beings. They have their work and they have their life. So you have to be somebody that is in tune with people's emotions. I talked earlier on about developing social and emotional intelligence, that, you know, in the school environment, academic intelligence is the king. In the real life, social and emotional intelligence is the king. Your academic intelligence will get you through the door, but your social and emotional intelligence will help you climb the ladder. So leading with empathy, that is one of the things Sicelo talked about, that you cannot lead from afar. Leadership is tough, but leadership is something that is done. It's doable, it's practical, but you cannot lead from afar. You have to be in tune with your members. You have to develop a relationship with them. Developing relationships, Sicelo talked about being able to communicate effectively. Developing relationships, connection is so important for you to lead people. So if you want to develop trust or build trust, you have got to lead with empathy. So I continue with the questioning, Sicelo. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's pretty late down in Zimbabwe. Now, we talk a lot about STEM, and that STEM is so important for sustainable development of a country. And you've talked about the fact that role models matter. You've talked about the fact that being curriculum, the type of curriculum that is very practical, that matters a lot. That STEM is not just about the theory. The theory is important, understanding the principles, but we have to take principles to practice. And so you've talked a lot about that. And you talked about partnership between the academic world, the business world, and you talked about the government and how you have been working with the government to support and to support the work that you are doing, and how you've gotten funding from different organizations. So can you tell me, can we continue on that line of thinking to say that STEM is so important? Who else do we need to have on the table so that everybody is part of this equation of promoting STEM education?
I think we can definitely add the community as a big stakeholder, something that we recently discovered when we went on an outreach, to say you get to spaces where it's not about the school and the teachers and the government, but it's about the community. What does the community say about a woman in STEM? What do they say about female pilots? What do they say about chemical engineers and electrical engineers? Some still feel those jobs are for the boy child. So the community must be engaged. If the school is lagging behind in terms of resources and infrastructure, the community should be engaged. And we're seeing that there's interesting financial, innovative funding models that the communities are coming up with to build their own schools and build their own hospitals, build their own communities. So it's one thing that we recently put out there as a fact that we cannot continue talking about sustainable development and STEM education without involving the community. So it's definitely a stakeholder that comes to play. And within the community, we see that there are organizations that are within the community. They also have a role to play in terms of corporate social responsibility to give back to the schools in that area or to whatever cause that that community has. So community engagement comes out.
Thank you so much for that. And I think another point is parents have such a big role. Parents have such a big role. With me working with the inner city youth, these are youth from underserved and underprivileged communities where a lot of people leave high school, they don't go to college, and parents have never gone to university. They don't see the value of that type of education. When we look at Nigeria and look at Nigeria as a case study and look at the north of Nigeria, where there's a lot of banditry and you have Boko Haram and a lot of terrorism, and girls are being kidnapped from schools, and parents don't want to send their girls to school. So parents have I talked about protecting your treasures. Your children are your treasures. So parents do have a big role being able to bring them along. You cannot just be advocating in the schools and talking to the children without talking to the parents and letting them understand the value of getting their children into STEM. One of the things that I have done within the work I do in communities and talking to the parents is really talking to the parents about the return on investment of having a STEM career, that you do a 5-year STEM career and you go to university and study a STEM course for 5 years, and you come out and you can earn very close to 6 figures in a couple of years, and you can actually begin to buy houses and cars, because those are tangible things that parents can understand, that you can actually change the ecosystem of their community. And then you get people who are alumni of your advocacy program to talk to them, parents of those people, to talk to them about how their life has been transformed since their child went to study engineering and got a good job and now has bought a house at 23. And other children are now following suit and has changed their lives because their child is earning so much money. That is such an important factor. You've got to bring parents along as part of that community. I will come back to you, Adekoya. I know you have a question. Sicelo, another question for you is, we've talked about the community and the business and all these people being very important stakeholders in promoting STEM education in Africa. I want to look at the government in terms of policies that they write. What can they do to promote STEM education? We talked about the fact that the government is important as a stakeholder. So we have this pipeline all the way from academics, we talked about businesses, communities. We mentioned about the government. Let's unpack the government. Let's look at them from the policies that they draw. What will you talk about the policies that they draw to promote STEM education? What role do they have to play?
The government definitely has a big role to play in terms of STEM education and its sustainability. What I've noticed from Zimbabwe is that we've got very good policies that support STEM education. But the issue is, who is monitoring the key performance indicators and seeking success or failure annually? So I don't think it's an issue of enabling policies. I think the policies are enabling. It's also my thought that it's not the perfect conclusion, but I think the other thing is, who knows these policies? We keep on talking about the government and the policies, but do you have an idea of the policies you have in your country that support STEM education or that support the girl child? What is there, what's in place? So it's always an interesting conversation. I always bring to the question to say, before we talk about policies, which ones are there? And which ones do you wish to do? Then we discover they are there, but people do not know about them. And on a government level, no one is auditing that. What are the key performance indicators for the number of girls who then got enrolled into a university, which is a policy that says girls get accepted even at lower points than boys? Who's taking care of that? And again, the famous argument, we do not want girls to be given lower points. They should be the same points as boys and na. Agreed, we want fair ground. But at the same time, really, which policies do we know of? And are they fully implemented? So my plea is always, can we have a good stock measure of the success of these policies which we already have? That is my question.
Thank you so much about that. Thank you so much for that. You know, one of the things about Africa is that we lack data. We don't have enough data. You go and Google and you find that there's very little data about Africa, like Sicelo has talked about, how many girls are really, pursuing STEM, and what are these policies? Where are they documented? Who is taking them to the grassroots level so people know about them? These are interesting questions to ponder on. None of us has the answer today, but it's something for you to keep at the back of your pocket, to ask yourself and to begin to do research. And that may be an open door for you to be innovative and come up with a program so that monitoring and evaluation of the government policies is being done, or just even raising awareness of what these policies are and taking that to the grassroots level, and writing up papers for people to know what these policies are. So that is something that we can take away with us, that we can talk more about at another time and say, I went to do some research and I found this and that policy, and maybe educate the public about that. But like Sicelo says, she doesn't know the policies, neither do I, but it's something that I'm curious about, and I hope you are curious about. I know, Adekoya, you have a question. I will take your question now before I ask Sicelo the last question. I know it's very late for Sicelo over in Zimbabwe. Adekoya, go ahead with your question. You have to unmute yourself. Does anybody else have a question apart from Adekoya? Adekoya, thank you for being so engaged. I really, really appreciate it. WITI is a learning community. In as much as we have speakers who are here to share their knowledge, nobody knows it all. So we always encourage engagement. We encourage participation. We encourage you sharing your knowledge, either in the chat or through questions. So Adekoya, I give you some stats for all the questions for your contribution and the questions that you've asked. Adekoya, go ahead. Ask your question or make your comment.
I was going to make a contribution to some of the things I had earlier. So I've heard talking about North and education in the North. So I happen to have been there. I taught in the secondary school there. So as a teacher at that time, I taught physics, XS1, 2, SS1, 2, 3 at that time. So from what I noticed is before the event of charity, there has been this narrative that the ladies, they don't like going to school, even though when they encourage them. In fact, in Jigawa State, the government placed all girls on free education to the university level in Jigawa State. I'm very well aware of that. And for some male that are outstanding, they place them on scholarship. But university level is not free for the male, but for the outstanding ones, they place them on scholarship. Some were even sent out. I have some friends that were sent to Cyprus to study for that as a civil engineer. So basically, I think that the factor is they need to educate from home, give them this understanding that they need to do more than just being the housewife or being in the community. I wrote some letters to the local government. I wanted to do some community kind of speech and to invite some guests to make them understand the fact that it is more than just coming to school daily because they want you to come. You have to do more. In secondary school, you can't even speak English. It's quite bad. And also in Jigawa, I think they are growing quite all right, because before I left there, I was involved in the construction of the first private university there. So, and I could see that some girls were admitted at that time. So, which means they are trying. So hopefully they get there. But still, if there's anything to be done, I think it should be done like the grassroots.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much, Adekoya, for your contribution. Thank you so much for the efforts that you are making and you made at the grassroots level to raise awareness to the girl child, to tell her that, to tell her about the value of education and that she can aspire to be more than a housewife. Thank you. It's going to take people in the community like yourself. Everybody has a seat at the table to share with their communities, with the girls in their communities, with the boys in their communities, that you can fulfill your potential. STEM is a career worth pursuing. A lot of the complex problems we have in the world, they can be solved with STEM philosophy, because we live in the digital economy that is anchored in strong scientific, applied technology, engineering and mathematical principles. So the world we live in is just empowered by the digital by digital technology. We live in a digital economy. So STEM is a contributing factor to that. So everybody has a stake at the table, and STEM is a career to be pursued. So thank you for sharing that at the grassroots level. I'm going to I have one last question for Sicelo. Sicelo, if you can come back on. And my last question for you is, what would you like to leave with the audience today?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed our session. As usual, I enjoy my sessions with you. Very informative. And what I would love to leave today is the fact that the change that we want to see in STEM education, innovation, and entrepreneurship for sustainable development begins with all of us. We all have a role to play. And I challenge all of us who are listening to do something. Education cannot wait. And it begins with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sicelo. Education cannot wait. Those are Sicelo's lasting thoughts. Everybody has a seat at the table. From encouraging youth to pursue education, to opening doors of opportunities, to understanding what the policies are that promote education, to creating practical projects that youth can be engaged in, to supporting, a youth who is already pursuing education. Everybody has a stake at the table. Those are Sicelo's lasting thoughts. Those are my thoughts as we bring this to a close. What role do you have to play in promoting STEM education in your community? Join us next month for WITI Africa session, where we'll be talking to yet another tech entrepreneur who is doing amazing things. We were in Zimbabwe this month. I think we are going to be in Nigeria next month with another tech entrepreneur. And we would love you to be part of the conversation. Come and share your ideas. These are very interactive sessions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sicelo Dube.